Hey, what's up, guys? I'm doing another tier list discussion here on the channel. This will be for kind of the end of the year, kind of a recap of the leaders that have come out in the last year or so. Just going over the tier list one last time before we start into 2022 and have a whole new host of metagames and whatnot. I haven't done one of these in a while. I think the last time I did one was after the release of Evolution Booster back in like April. So yeah, it's been a minute. The metagame's changed quite a bit. We've had all of our nationals out of the way. As I'm recording this, Worlds is going on, so I haven't seen the results from that event yet. So bear that in mind while I go over the tier list here that I've made for myself and where I kind of personally see the metagame, having played at US Nats, seeing all the decks there that got top 32 and top 25% and all that good stuff, how everything's just kind of performed. Obviously, this is all just like my own personal biases that I take a little bit into account, both metagame percentage and play rate, as well as just like overall performance and my own personal biases as to how much I think a deck has the potential to perform, even if it hasn't necessarily performed all that well in the last couple of events and whatnot. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So right here, bringing up the tier list, just getting right into the thick of it here, tiermaker.com. We'll just start with the S tier. It's pretty obvious. Icarus is, the de facto best deck, quote-unquote best deck. It won most of the nationals, going into Worlds, and, it's just incredibly versatile, incredibly good deck overall. Soul Striker also did extremely well. It got multiple tops at US Nats, and I think some of the other ones. King Piccolo was kind of the dark horse going into all of the nationals. I personally played King Piccolo. I got top 25% with a 6-2 record playing him. You can check out the deck profile on the channel as well if you want to see my tournament report and the list that I used. But I didn't think that this deck wasn't really on anyone's radar going into the event. I just played it because I liked the deck and I felt comfortable with it, and it felt like a strong deck. And it ended up performing well, not just at the US Nats, but also in some of the other ones as well. Cell Surge is still incredibly strong. A lot of people were teching to beat it at US Nats, but it still snuck one into top cut. I think it got top 8 or top 4. At the very least, it got top 8. Jordan Markle playing that, even in a heavily teched metagame. And, even if a meta is not prepared for it, it's going to be absolutely dominant. Gogeta is the best black deck, and it's not even close. Little bit of RNG, but otherwise it's just a very strong deck. And then this is probably the most contentious pick I have up in S tier with Sin Shenron. I think it got multiples in top 16 of US Nats, but it didn't really convert all that well. But I still think the deck's really crazy good. It can just kind of pivot between its game plans really effectively, and you can just kind of play controller, mid-range, or aggro with it, and it's just incredibly strong and versatile. I could see an argument for bumping it down maybe to A tier, and that would kind of make the S tier a little bit cleaner, because then there'd just be one leader of each color, assuming we're just calling Cell a mono green deck, because it really is just a mono green deck. It just happens to be Surge flavored, but Sin is also just really good, and I have a lot of respect for this deck. I think it's still very strong. Moving down to A tier, Golden Frieza. If you look at my last tier list, I think I've had it down in like the Rogue section, or tier B or whatever, in the last couple of tier list discussions, and the anniversary box really bumped this up, giving it some more mono yellow engines and ways to play to make the mono yellow version more consistent. It got some good conversion at the national events. Android 16 also was a dark horse. Android 16 and Android 21 both got top placement at the US Nats. I don't remember where I had these guys at on my last tier list. I probably should have looked at that before recording this, but you guys can check that out on the channel as well. This is the Battle Evolution tier list. They've been floating around, but I think the Nats performance for both of these guys kind of really opened people's eyes to see, these decks are actually pretty good. I don't think they're crazy like S tier level good, but like they're still really good. A strong pilot will do well with them. They're really good. Gohan, I'm pretty sure is the second best mono red deck. The only one that could be in contention with that would be like starter Vegeta with like the crew package, but I didn't see that deck didn't seem to do all that well. There were some people in top 25% with me who were playing that leader, with the Vegeta crew deck, but it wasn't around that much. Yuso and Gohan has had a more of a pedigree for some of the other events he's gotten some top placements at, so that's why I'm thinking he's probably the second best red leader after Piccolo. Green got the green leaders here. I will say these aren't in any particular order. I just have them sorted by color. So placement higher or lower to the left and right. Don't read into that. I just have them sorted yellow, blue, red, green, black. That's just how it shook out. Sin Shenron's the main one because I was not really sure whether he should be S or A, so I just kind of put him at the bottom of S. But everyone else is just sorted by color, so don't read into that too much. King Cold got a top 16 at US Nats. It's just a really strong deck. He's just had a solid performances ever since he's come out. Very solid. Gotenks converted pretty well at Nationals as well. He didn't get any top 16s, but he did get multiple in the top 32. Hatch won, I believe, the Latin American Nats, although that was a much different format because they didn't have the newest set, and I believe they had to play best of one on day one, which is kind of just a weird way to run an event, but I still have a lot of respect for Hatch. He's definitely one of the strongest black leaders, an extremely strong control leader. The Gogeta stuff with the 8-drop Gogeta was a huge boost for him. Mechi Cabra also did fairly well at US Nats, which was surprising to me because I never thought this leader was all that good, but I have a newfound respect for him after seeing his performance. Again, none in the top 16, but multiple. I believe there were multiple in the top 32, and there was definitely multiple in the top 25%. Which top 25% was X2 at US Nats, if you weren't aware, which was there was a lot. There was I think one or two X2s in the top 16. And then it went all the way down to probably I think 50th place in the X2 bubble. So yeah, that's why I'm talking about top 25% a lot more than top 32. But because it was all kind of the same record, it was just based on tiebreakers essentially. But yeah, Mechi Cabra did extremely well. I will take this opportunity to talk about my tier now that we're at the bottom of A, whereas S and A are pretty obvious. It's the line starts to blur a little bit between the tiers after you get beyond the A tier. Status, I will say I was never really sure how to format my tier lists for this game because it's not always immediately obvious the power difference between some decks. And you could potentially just put the rogue tier right here, although it looks weirder to have some of these leaders above some of these leaders. I don't necessarily consider this rogue tier to be better or worse than any of the decks in B and A. I think that's what makes a deck a rogue deck in my eyes, is because some of these decks just have extremely strong matchups against a very specific sect of decks, right? Baby is extremely good against the hyper aggro decks. Janemba is extremely good against just the value pile decks that don't close super fast. Android 18 mil is really good if no one's packing any answers for it, that kind of thing. Same with Broly and Cooler. All of these decks just have very strong specific matchups that they want to see, and don't do very well in the matchups that aren't those. So that's what makes them a rogue deck in my eyes. And I don't necessarily think these decks are better or worse than anything in B tier. I just find the decks in B tier to be more well-rounded archetypes, whereas the rogue decks can be significantly stronger or weaker depending on what they end up seeing. So that's just kind of my metric for gauging that. And then C tier, all this stuff down here, I just kind of consider to be viable decks, but just not. They are generally going to be outclassed by anything above it, but they're still fine picks. Anyway, getting into B tier, Helku is a very solid yellow Saiyan leader. Same with Turles. I think Turles is kind of slept on. You can check out my yellow deck profile for Turles on the channel as well. I think Turles is really cool because he starts with the Unison in play, which is just, really strong boon. And his engine's okay. He gets to play some free battle cards. And the same goes with Helku. He gets really good card filtering and gets to put battle cards into play for free. They're just, these guys are just a little bit worse than Icarus as far as yellow Saiyan leaders go. And these guys didn't get any kind of results at any of the Nats events, whereas Golden Frieza did get some, and Golden Frieza has a bit more of a pedigree than these guys as well. Although Helku did do fairly well at the start of set 14, if I remember, or set 13, I think was the set he came out, if I remember. No, it was set 14. I think he did a well at some of the webcam events. And I remember he did well at our store champ we ran here in Washington as well. But yeah, Turlev's, like I said, this is just kind of a personal bias pick that I have right here. I think he's better than people give him credit for, and I think he's about the same power level as Helku if you build him and play him right. Zamasu, SS3, and Gohan. These decks are all just kind of like blue leaders that are good, but they're just worse than Soul Striker. Like that's just straight up the truth with them. They have some slightly different matchups and some different play to them, obviously, but in general, Soul Striker is just going to do what these guys want to do, but be better at doing it. Invoker is still around. I probably wouldn't have even had this on the tier list, honestly, except when I played against Legends at Nats, when you're both in, like, we're in the X2 bracket in, like, the last round, then, this deck's real, it's still kicking. People are there just using the TP, or the Dash Pack Goku now is the win condition instead. And, it looked really solid. This leader's still really broken, too. Its effects are still really stupid good, so... Yeah, don't sleep on this deck. If you really like Invoker, you can definitely find some builds that will put in work as long as you're willing to put in the time and the discipline to learning them. Vegeta, starter Vegeta. You can build this as like U7, like the Gohan leader, although I think the Gohan leader is slightly better at doing that just because it gets better value, although the Vegeta leader can be more aggressive in what it wants to do with its energy being more proactive. But you can also use this as a Bardock's crew leader. Like I said, I think there was at least one person in top 25 playing this leader, if not more. Shout out in the comment section if you happen to be one of those people or no for a fact. But I saw this around at Nats, and it was putting in work. It just didn't have a huge conversion rate. This deck can still blow your back walls out, though. The crew version specifically can just like completely hose you. It's a deck that I have a lot of respect for and have a lot of fear for as well. Bulma, I know there was definitely one person in top 32 playing Bulma at Nats and just playing Earthling Bulma. I think this deck's solid. It has some problems against incredibly fast decks, as well as decks. That's the main thing. Is it sounds kind of counterintuitive because it puts a lot of blockers into play, but the deck does need a turn or two to start getting set up before it can start getting its really long blocker chains going, and it generally does better against other mid-range strats I've found. Launch is in kind of a weird spot. She hasn't really been doing a whole lot, but she's so versatile, and she can just be, plug and played with so many archetypes that it's hard to not just have her at B tier. You can play crew, you can play Invoker, you can play tricolor good stuff. You can play red, green, aggro. There's just everything you can do with Launch. It's Launch. Jiren's kind of... he never really did a whole lot. I remember Android did well with him at one of the webcam tournaments, but for the most part, he just hasn't done a ton. I think he also was around at US Nats, but I don't remember exactly. I've seen a lot of deck profiles, and when I was doing research for this tier list and everything. I think this deck's solid. It's just generally not going to be as good as like Gohan or King Piccolo. Broly BR I've had floating around on the tier list, honestly. And he's been doing well at, he did well at Asian Nats and has been putting in the work at Worlds. I don't want to like toot my own horn or anything, but I definitely think that this leader, I've been kind of saying this deck's good. And people just weren't playing it. That's one of those things where I generally do like a little bit of a personal bias just based on how strong I think the deck is, even if people aren't playing it, because, people have to play the deck in order for it to, get tops at events. And if people aren't playing the leader, then it's not going to get any tops at events, even if it is really good. This leader's just really good. You get a free +1 on the front, and you get to essentially self-awaken with the card you get, and then you get to draw back up to 7 every time you swing on the back. For a fairly minimal downside for a hand control leader of not being able to spam your board going super wide, like, it generally plays the same as, like, Cell Surge, except, Cell Surge never really commits all that much to the battle area all at once, so, and you get board control on top of it, too, by being able to KO a card on both players' board. Really good leader. Green Broly's just been kind of plugging away, doing his thing, he's just been getting support and has been doing okay. Majin Buu's been doing some stuff kind of in the shadows. I think this leader is like low-key better than people give it credit for. Majin Vegeta is also just kind of plugging away, being a green aggro deck. I kind of had him down here before, but, the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to just put him up here, just because, he can still do stuff. It's just kind of like with the SS4 Toa deck. It never really did, crazy things, but the deck's solid enough where, it's at the same level as, Gohan and Helku and stuff. Bardock, I don't remember seeing if he did well at any of the nationals. I could definitely see an argument for him being up here. I've just never seen him actually, convert a really strong tournament result on his own. But if you guys have examples of times he's done well, or any top 32 deck profiles or anything like that, hit us up in the comments section. Let me know, because like I said, I can definitely see an argument for him being up here. I just haven't personally seen him doing anything. That's why I have him down in B tier right now. But yeah, Vegex just kind of fell off in favor of Gogeta Xeno. Gogeta Xeno generally just kind of does the black spam thing a little bit better than him now. I don't think there's anything wrong with this leader, though. He still gets to spam a whole bunch of extra cards or not extra cards, extra free cards, though. Even with the nerf and the errata and everything, he's still crazy. Kid Ku, you can plug and play the Gogeta Xeno engine with him, and he's really strong. He's done a whole lot of stuff, and he's just solid. Going down to the rogue tier, Jiren and Topo can do really well against all of these can do really well against very specific archetypes. Jiren, he just doesn't die to aggro. Topo can stop anything wanting to spam. Especially if he can win the die roll and stop your opponent from establishing anything by getting his unison out. Red Broly can just completely blow someone's back walls out, especially if he wins the die roll and people aren't playing the right proper negates for him. Cooler does extremely well against things that just want to vomit their hand into play, or just play a value game, but he struggles against anything that doesn't have to commit battle cards in order to win the game. Baby does really well against hyper aggro decks, which there just isn't really a ton of right now. The format's extremely mid-rangey, so it's just there's no really any reason to register Baby, especially after the nerf. Janemba does really well against slower, more value-oriented decks. I could see him doing fairly well against Icarus and stuff like that if people wanted to bring him to events. He did pretty well at the start of set 15. I remember him doing well at some webcam events, and I think he's still kicking. If you want to play Mill, he's a fine deck. Android 18 Mill is just kind of a cheesy deck. It's just about if people are playing the answers to the Frieza. If they are, then you're not going to win. If they aren't, then you're got a really good shot at winning, especially best of one. Slug Handfell's kind of in the same vein as Janemba. It's just he can basically never beat Android 17 Turning the Tide or Fu Shrouded in Mystery, but against the decks that aren't packing that are value oriented, he's just gonna crush. AOD is just really solid. This it's kind of like a B tier kind of feeling deck, but I feel like a lot of what they do now rides on kind of what their anti-meta strategies are. And it does kind of feel like more of an anti-meta strategy than just a completely value-oriented mid-range deck. But, it's kind of... This one kind of floats between B and Rogue for me, depending on the build, because this can just do a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, and then C tier is just kind of stuff that functions, but just isn't as good as all the stuff in B tier and above, essentially. These are kind of like my locals, quote, locals tier decks, where you can just kind of bring them, do reasonably well at a reasonably competitive locals as long as you play well. But, they're probably not the picks for bigger events. And, yeah, that's my tier list, guys, for the end of 2021. Let me know in the comments section if there's anyone you think I missed, or if any of my takes just seem egregiously wrong. You think, maybe you think Gohan's the best red deck in the format. I don't know. Let us know in the comments section what your thoughts are on this, or if you want to see more of these kinds of videos in the future. But with that, I will see you in the next year. Bye, guys.